This is the ABQ Business Podcast
with your host, Jason Rigby.
Each week we'll interview visionary business leaders to inspire the creative power and spirit
That's in every entrepreneur.
discussing strengths, weaknesses, strategies, systems, and the problems we can all solve together for a new future for local small business.
Let's talk about your business, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Okay, that was horrific. I get it. We're going to talk about culture. Culture in the sense of what you can do to make your company bulletproof. And I'm going to use Brian Chesky. How many of you have heard of him? Raise your hand if you have. If you're driving, don't raise your hand. He is the founder of Airbnb. They are worth $31 billion. He's as some of you would say, a kid. His high school yearbook message was this. This is what he wrote about himself in his high school message. I'm sure I'll amount to nothing, Brian Chesky. 8 years later, he was living in a San Francisco apartment. He was unemployed designer. He had a roommate, and they were trying to think of ways to make some money. There was a design conference in the area, and all the local hotels were fully booked. So they were thinking about it. What could we do? So to provide like super cheap and hospitable hosting, they put in their apartment an air mattress and Pop-Tarts and were like ultra nice. And then a few months later, that worked so well. A few months later, they started airbedandbreakfast.com. And we all know what happened. 12 years later, here we are. Brian is steering this huge, massive ship as the CEO of this $31 billion Airbnb. This is interesting. He puts culture above absolutely everything. He even goes far to say this. Listen to this. This is his quote. Why is culture so important to a business? Here is a simple way to frame it. The stronger the culture, the less corporate process a company needs. Let me say that again. The stronger the culture, the less corporate process a company needs. When the culture is strong, you can trust everyone to do the right thing. People can be independent and autonomous. They can be entrepreneurial. And if we have a company that is entrepreneurial in spirit, we will be able to take our next woman on the moon leap. It's by Brian. You know, when you look at that beginning of trying to hire employees, Brian with Airbnb, he spent over 6 months hiring his first employee. He poured over thousands of resumes because it wasn't important to build the company as much as it was important to have the right people in the right places. So when we look at his first employee, he said this. He said he wanted to be part of the Air fam, like Air family. And then the company's DNA, he articulated out, and I'll get into that a little bit. But this first applicant, he said to himself, would I want to work with 100 or 1,000 of these guys? And you know, I want to say this because he was very picky on this. It's not that he wanted, you know, a company full of these clones that would do anything he said as the CEO. He talked about, you know, diversity and having different backgrounds so that you can bring, he was a designer originally, so that you can bring different ideas. That's what you want to hire, lots of different people. You don't want to have everybody all the same because you need that creativity that each person brings from where, if they may be from the East Coast or the West Coast or whatever it may be. Everyone has this underlying drive and value system that they have instilled in him. And that's what he wanted to tap into. And he wanted to make sure that underlying drive and value system was what would be easily instilled, easily aligned with Airbnb. And he said this, he says, culture is simply a shared way of doing something with passion. And I love when he gets into like universal values and he gets into companies. He says this is awesome. If you can take your, we're transparent, we're honest, we're that, we're this. He said, if you can take that and slap that on another corporation, you need to redo them all. It should be very, very specific. He said, there's no such thing as a good or bad culture. It's either strong or weak culture. And a good culture for somebody else may not be a good culture for you. I've talked about this before. There may be certain things that you are passionate about as the founder, as the CEO, as the business leader, that another company would hate. And that's fine. That's you. What are you passionate about? What do you stand for? Does your company stand for that? And I know a lot of us, when we start talking culture, we think fluffiness and weakness and it just, we got all these taglines and, I'm going to sit here and waste this piece of paper to write out my mission goal and, all that junk. And I like what he says here when he gets into his specific Airbnb values, because he writes these values out, and you can go online, look up Airbnb values, but here's one: champion our mission. Airbnb's mission is to make people feel like they belong anywhere. Brian used to ask interviewers, would they still work with him if they knew they would die in 10 years' time? If they said yes, then he knew they shared the same beliefs. Imagine that. I think majority of people would say no. That's a passionate person that say, yeah, if I knew I was dying in 10 years, I want the job for 10 years, and this is a place that I would want to work. He also said to be serial entrepreneurs, like actual serial. You're like, what, Jason? Well, they were struggling. Airbnb was struggling in the beginning, and they were only getting about 2 bookings a month. So at the time, there was the election, and they began to sell election-themed cereal so that they could boost their income. And someone had came up with that strategy, and it worked, and it helped save them. If they wouldn't have been able to sell that cereal, Airbnb wouldn't be here. One of the things that he said, I want you to listen to this one, business owners. Hire people that intimidate you, not imitate you. Wrong. Intimidate you. Founders pour their heart and souls into their company, yet this sense of ownership can sometimes backfire. You need to understand that you cannot control everything. That it is not your personal ego or your personal pride that sits there and lets you baby each employee and baby the company. He said that if you're acting that way, you're not going to get the best people. You're not going to be able to hire them. And Brian takes the opposite approach. He says this: I think that's what the first thing is, to build a team that is so talented that they kind of slightly make you uncomfortable to be with them, because you're going to have to raise your game to be with them. Oh, I love that. Is the team around you, do they make you uncomfortable? Do they make you want to raise your game? Do you have those type of people around you? He said, to create a strong culture, you need people who won't just make your employees better, but force you to be better too. And he talks about the self-importance that CEOs and these overpowering condition. He goes into a thing about, we treat our company like a child where we want to baby it, but we keep it that way, where if you think of it as a child long-term, as the child grows up, it has to, eventually leave the nest per se. And we have to let it go, and we have to let it go overnight and go spend at friends' houses. And that's scary. And, we walk, our child into school, and we give them a lunchbox, and here you go. And then we, it's just, we take them to practices and let them do that after they've been at school all day. And then next thing you know, they're going on trips with their friends to EDM concerts, for 5 days. And then they're off to college. It's one of these things that if we don't understand our company as a child's character, and he talks about this, then we're not going to have the ability to grow. That it needs that child's development. And I like what he says here. He says problems will come and go, but culture is forever. I encourage you, go online. You can look up Brian Chesky. He is the Airbnb CEO. I was reading some stuff about him and just thought I wanted to hop on here for 10 minutes. But I want to thank our podcast, especially, not just you listening to this podcast, but I want to thank all our sponsors. I'm going to be announcing a new sponsor here real soon. Super excited about that. We have Well Life ABQ that just came on. If you're looking for direct primary care and you want the very best, where you have, providers that are spending 30, 45 minutes with you and your employees, and they're taking the time, and it's actually cheaper than what you've got going on now. Maybe you can't afford health insurance. This is an alternative to that. And you can read about it. It's called direct primary care. And you can go to wellifeabq.com. They're also on Instagram for that. And I encourage you to look at them. I have Quality Mazda. If you haven't checked out a Mazda, if you've been looking at BMW, Mercedes, or whatever, you need to check out the signature series of a Mazda. That's what I drive, CX-5. Absolutely, it's going to blow you. It's got real wood in it. A new Bose system that's better than Cadillac and all those. So I encourage you, if you haven't looked at Quality Mazda, then you should. It's a family owned, been here since 1957. They have product specialists, not salespeople. I would not support a dealership if they acted like a typical dealership. I've had dealerships want to support me, and I have told them no. So I'm very picky with who I bring for sponsorship. 99.9 The Beat FM. Want to thank them. That is a locally owned minority hip-hop old school radio station. No matter where you're at in the United States, if you want super cool music and you want to support a not-for-profit, you can go to 99beatfm.com and you'll see it on there, The Beat, and you can stream it into your business. Just get some speakers, some computer speakers, whatever you want, and play that. You're going to see people singing along. Everybody loves the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. It's clean. There's no swear words. You don't have to worry about that with your customers. So really want to thank them. I'm just so thankful of all my sponsors. We have Tartle.co. If you want to get paid for your data, then go to Tartle.co and they will pay you. How much did Facebook and Google pay you last year? Nothing? Well, it's time for you to get paid for your data. So you can sign up for that. It's free. It's Tartle.co. And, for me, it's like these sponsors that I have, I know everyone personally. I have conversations with them. I know the products and the services that they have. I know the culture and who they are. And that's why I appreciate them so much. And that's why I'm so picky. I get opportunities all the time. The podcast has been growing like crazy. And so people see that, even companies that are out of Albuquerque, that are out of New Mexico, because the podcast has been growing. Thank you guys, across the United States. I appreciate that. And so I'm getting all these companies that are wanting to sponsor, but either I don't know them, or they don't take the time to get to know me, or we don't have a conversation that goes well. So I just want you guys to know that you can trust who I'm going to promote. And it has absolutely nothing to do with money. I had, and I would mention it, they're in Costco all across the United States. I had a brand contact me, and I was kind of like, and I was like, no, can't do it. And it was a lot of money. Podcasting is kind of like the new thing, and having podcasts and getting sponsorships and promotions and all that stuff. As you grow, then it can grow bigger. As you guys saw what Joe Rogan did with over $100 million contract with Spotify. So you can imagine the amount of money that advertisers are throwing at podcasts because they're growing, thanks to you guys and thanks to listening to this. But I want you guys to support our sponsors. If you have any questions, you can always DM me at ABQ Jason Rigby on my Instagram. That's ABQ Jason Rigby. That's the best way to get a hold of me. You can also go to abqpodcast.com. That has my email and all that on there. I've got some resources, some books if you want to read those. I always post usually 3, 4, 5 times a day on Instagram, especially Instagram stories. I love that. What I'm reading, what's going on. I've been here on this workout kick here lately and trying to eat right. So I've been going through all that. I've been getting really motivated by a couple guys that I follow online, and I share those. So it'd be really fun to be a part of if you want to be a part of the ABQ podcast family, I encourage you to go to ABQ Jason Rigby on Instagram and sign up and start following me, and you'll see that. And you can DM me. I usually always answer them. So please make sure if you have a question, concern, you want a certain type of show, let me know. But I want this to be short today, so I'm out. I thank you guys once again, love you guys, and hope that each and every one of you are successful and that you're just hammering every nail every day and living your absolutely best life.
Thank Thank you for joining us on the Albuquerque Business Podcast. And thanks to our sponsor, RigbyDigital.com. Make sure to subscribe and share.
And go to abqpodcast.com.
Get show notes, resources, and links to everything we talked about today to help you navigate your journey as an entrepreneur and business owner.